reading of 1 Samuel, we are at the point where Saul is chasing after David in the most crazy ways for the silliest reasons. Jealousy mostly. David has absolutely done nothing to ask for any of this. But David is running, and he's doing it without asking God to lead in his life. And so David makes some crazy choices. David runs through a temple, asks for food, asks for weapons, grabs the showbread, grabs Goliath's sword, and continues the run. Well, there happened to be somebody there at the temple who saw David, who reports to Saul. And in our last bit of our study last week, we find that Saul goes in and he wipes out the priest and all of his family, all their sheep and everything else. One of the sons escapes. And we'll pick that up in 1 Samuel 22, 20, and I'm going to have a horrible time with a bunch of these names, so you just bear with me. Yep. Now one of the sons, and I'll just say it like that, escaped and fled after David. And the son told David that Saul had killed the Lord's priest. So David said to Abiathar, I knew that day when I saw this gentleman, that Ammonite, was there, that he would surely tell Saul, I have caused the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me. Do not fear, for he who seeks my life seeks yours life, but with me you shall be safe. So, when he escaped, by the way, he actually grabbed the ephod from one of his, because remember, they are the priest. He went and grabbed one of the ephods from there. And the ephod, if you're not familiar with it, is where you come up to the priest and you could ask God questions, and one of the stones would light up one way or the other, and you could get your answers from God. And this is going to come and play at sometime down the way here. Then they told David, chapter 23, the Philistines were fighting against Gila. Yeah, I'm going to say that, Gila. And they were robbing the threshing floors. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go and attack these Philistines? And the Lord said to David, go attack the Philistines and save Gila. But David's men said to him, look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more if we go to Gila against the army of the Philistines? And David inquired of the Lord once again. And the Lord answered him and said, arise, go to Gila, and I will deliver the Philistines into the hands. And David and his men went to Gila and fought the Philistines, struck them with a mighty blow, and took their livestock, so that David saved the inhabitants of Gila. Now it happened that the priest's son fled to David at Gila, and he went down with the ephod in his hands. And Saul was told that David had gone to Gila. So Saul said, God has delivered him into my hands, and he has struck himself into by entering a town that has gates and bars. Then Saul called the people together for war to go down to Gila and besiege David and his men. And when David knew that Saul's plot evil against him, he said to the priest, "Bring the ephod." And then David said, "O Lord God of Israel, your servant is certainly heard that Saul seeks to come to Gibeah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Gilead deliver me into the hands? Will Saul come down to your servant, as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I pray, tell your servant." And God said, "He will come down." And then David answered, "Will the men of Gilead deliver me and my men into the hands of Saul?" And the Lord said, "They will deliver you." So David and his 600 men arose and departed Gilead, and went wherever they could go. Then it was told to Saul that David escaped Gilead, and so he halted the expedition. David stays in all these different strongholds in the wildernesses and in the forest and stuff. And you can't believe who comes along and creeps in there to the forest to talk to David. Remember, Saul's after David, but David's escaped to all these different wildernesses. But guess who wants to go see him from the house of Saul? Jonathan shows up and makes David very, very happy. So David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in the forest. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, oops, I got too many turned here. There we are. Arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened the hand of his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of my father, for Saul, my father, shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and you shall be and I shall be next to you. Even my father knows that." So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. Now, isn't that a great visit from a buddy? Talk about encouraging. And that's the kind of friend you always have. And Saul, he's still trying to go after David constantly, and he gets rumors about, hey, David's over here or David's over there. And Saul's like, okay, I'm running all over the place and I'm not finding him. So when he hears the last rumor, he says, "You guys tell me for sure. Go up there and find out how his actions are, how his dealings are, and then come back and tell me." We're going to jump on down to chapter 24. We're going to try to cover quite a bit here in this lesson. Now it happened when Saul returned from the following the Philistines, that it was told him, saying, "Take note, David is in the wilderness. Gibeah? Eden Gidai. There you go. In Gedi. Okay, in Gedi. All right, there we are. Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men from Israel and went to seek David and his men in the rocks of the wild goats. So he came to the sheepfold by the road, and there was a cave. David went in to attend to his needs. You know, some people have speculated to go in and use the restroom, basically. And why he's in there, one thing he doesn't know is that happens to be 600 men, and David happened to be stuffed away in the same cave. And so he's taking care of business, and David and his men are in there, and David's men are like encouraging him, "Hey, go kill him." And you think about this, their reasoning is that God has brought him to that cave that you are hiding in. This is a sign from God that he has delivered him into your hand. And believe me, David was tempted. But David thought about it and said, you know what? God's in charge. God anointed him. And I ain't going to touch him. If God set him up, God's going to take him down. And it's not going to be by my hands unless he gives me the command. And so David arose secretly. We are on verse 4. Rose secretly, cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Now it happened afterwards that the heart of David troubled him because he had cut Saul's robe. I mean, it's even to the point where I respect what God has set up, and I do not want to, mock it too bad. But anyway, and the Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, and the Lord my anointed. To stretch out my hand against him. See, he is the anointed of the Lord. So David restrained his servants with these words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul got up from the cave and went on his way. And David arose afterwards, went out of the cave and called out to Saul. Was David really scared of Saul very much? He's got 3,000 men with him and Saul. And all David's got is 600 men in the cave. And it's, yeah. Anyway. So David, David arose and went after him and went out to the cave and called out to Saul, saying, my lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David stood with his face to the earth and bowed down. And David said to Saul, why do you listen to the words of men who say, indeed, David seeks you harm? Look, this day your eyes have seen that the Lord delivered you into my hand in the cave. Someone urged me to kill you, but my eye spared you, and I said, I will not stretch out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. Moreover, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand? For in that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you. Know and see there is neither evil nor rebellion in my hand. I have not sinned against you, yet you hunt my life to take it. Let the Lord judge between you and me. Let the Lord avenge me on you. But my hand shall not be against you. As a proverb of the ancients say, wickedness proceeds from the wicked, but my hand shall not be against you. Afterwards, whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dead dog, a flea? Therefore, let the Lord be judged. Judge between you and me, and see the plea and plead my case, and deliver me out of your hands. Now you can imagine Saul standing there before his 3,000 men and David's 600 men. And David just lets out an argument like this. What are you going to say is King Saul? I mean, if you halfway got any brains, you're going to know that you could have been killed seconds ago.
But David respected the position of Saul, the office that Saul had.
Now, I know, and see, so it was when David had finished speaking these words to Saul, and I'm in 16, by the way, and that Saul said, is that your voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Then he said to David, you are more righteous than I, for you have rewarded me with good. whereas I have rewarded you with evil. You have shown me this day how you have dealt well with me. For when the Lord delivered me into your hands, and you did not kill me. For if a man finds his enemy and will not let him get away safely, therefore may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now I know indeed that you shall be king, and the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore swear now to me by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and you will not destroy my name for my father's house. So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the strongholds. He doesn't trust him. There's no good reason to trust Saul. Every time he turns around, Saul is coming after him. 25. It starts off with the death of Samuel. And it doesn't have much to say there, but I'll talk about it a little bit because Patriarchs and Prophets talks about it and just reminds us of who Samuel was to Israel. You know, he was the judge. He was there way before Saul as far as their commander-in-chief. He was their judge. He was their prophet. God had set him up to rule the Israelites ahead of time. And instead of choosing him, though, Samuel, as their king, they had chose Saul. Now they've got Saul, who's little more than just a madman right at this point. They see that their decisions have been very, very poor. And the thing that has held Israel together has always been Samuel. Whenever they had big decisions to make, they went to Samuel. When they had things that they needed to inquire of the Lord, they went to Samuel. Samuel, from the time he was a youth, and we've studied it all the way through Samuel up till this point, is Samuel has been leading them and judging them in the righteous way of God. When they need to hear the Lord's voice, they go to Samuel because he's got like the connection to the throne, and they love it. They're going to miss him. I mean, Saul is not leading his people into a relationship with God. If you're following Saul and following along with his politics and loving him, well, guess what? Your ways are getting corrupted daily. You're going wrong. Let's jump on down here to another story, and I'm going to summarize a bunch of this, but David and his men have hanged out in this place, Carmel, and there has been a bunch of sheep herders out there. Now, remember, David was raised a sheep herder, so he sees these guys, these sheep herders, and finds out who they work for. This Nabal is how I would say it. And he's a very rich man, but he's also very, very stingy, and he's a jerk. Simply said. There was several different words, depending on which translation you have, but it basically means that he was a jerk and he was very stingy. David has been taking care of the sheep herders and the sheep there and kind of surrounding them with his 600 men living up there in the fields, and they've been taking care of their stuff too. But the whole time they're there, they've never touched anything of Nabal's sheep or any of the flocks there. He have not been bad to the shepherds. In fact, he treats them as good as he possibly can. Now, this is a time of sheep shearing. It is a time typically of the end of the season type of thing. People are glad, they're very cheerful. They usually give gifts back and forth. So David sends his men to Nabal, and just ask him, hey, anything that comes to your hands that you find that you don't need, that food-wise or otherwise, please send it our way. We've been very, very good to you all the way through. This Nabal goes, what? Who? Who is this son of Jesse that I should even give him anything? And anyway, he does it and treats his men so rudely that when they come back and give a report to David, David forgets that he's a man of God and falls into the same trap as Saul and is ready to revenge how he's been treated. Tells his men, put on your swords, we're going to go visit this Nabal. And they're on their way. Well, meanwhile, back at Nabal's house, the young men go and tell his wife, Abigail. Abigail hears this story, and without telling her husband anything, she grabs a whole bunch of cakes of bread. She grabs a bunch of cakes of raisins and of dates, and she gets a bunch of gifts together and puts it on donkeys, and she starts running and going off after King David. David, not king yet, but David, who's on his way to kill her husband, by the way. And he's pretty ticked off, and she's like, yeah, I can imagine. But I like to pick up her words here. With 25:20. So it was, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under the cover of the hill, and there were David and his men coming down towards her, and she met them. Now David had said, surely in vain I have protected all this fellow's stuff in the wilderness, so that nothing was miss, and all the belongings of his, and he repaid me evil for good. May God do so more to him, to the enemies of the David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light. And then Abigail saw David. She dismounted quickly. This is verse 23. Off of her donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground. So she fell at his feet and said, "Oh, on me, my Lord, on me let this iniquity be, and let your maidservant speak in your ears and hear the words of your maidservant. Please let not my Lord regard the scoundrel Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name. The folly is with him. But I, his maidservant, did not see the young man, my Lord, whom you sent. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to bloodshed and avenging yourself with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek harm to my Lord be like Nabal. And now this present which your maidservant has brought to my Lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my Lord. Please forgive the trespasses of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord an enduring house, because the Lord fights the battles of the Lord. Evil is not found in you, and throughout your days. Yet a man has risen to pursue you and to seek your life, but the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundles of the living with the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he shall sling out, as from the pocket of a sling. It shall come to pass, when the Lord has done for my Lord according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel, that it will not grieve you or offend your heart, my Lord, neither that you have shed blood without cause, or that my Lord has avenged himself. But when the Lord has dealt well with my Lord, then remember your maidservant. It's hard to follow in the language we just read it in. But Nabal, she talks sense into him. You're going to go shed a bunch of blood. That's what you're mad about. You're ready to go do. And this is not a good thing. It's not from God. You haven't even asked God about it. You're just ticked off because somebody treated you like a jerk. And she's saying, listen, if I had known this, I would have took care of it myself ahead of time. You wouldn't even be in this position. But she says, I'm here. Here's the gifts. Give them to your men. Don't go shedding innocent blood. You don't need this on your hands for no reason. She's being more of a friend than a lot of friends do. Can we, as a people, take a rebuke? Isn't a true friend somebody who can tell you the truth about the way you're acting or about the way you're feeling and rebuke you, and you take it as the words of God? Sometimes we all need to hear it. We get mad. We do silly things. We say things we shouldn't. We want to do things we should not do. But when we hear that voice, may we know that it is God who is talking to us and rebuking us. If you follow the story along a little bit, David and his men turn around, and David actually thanks her. It's let's see. Now therefore, please let me strike him at once with. Nope, I'm in the wrong place. I jumped too far. There was some words I wanted to say. Yep, I need to be back in another chapter here. Abigail went home. She was going to tell her husband. David has sent her back home in peace. I have heeded your voice and respected your person. David really likes her. For one, she's very good looking, but for another, she's very wise. And she has said things lovingly and kindly to him and has dealt very smart. She goes home, she's going to tell her husband, but he's drunk. He's having a big old feast, and he is just hammered. So she doesn't tell him that day. Next day he wakes up, she tells him. And it says, verse 37, so it was in the morning when the wine had gone from Nabal, that his wife told him all the things, that his heart died within him, and he became like a stone. Then it happened after about 10 days that the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, blessed be the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil. For the Lord has returned wickedness to Nabal on his head. The verse that comes to my mind is the verse, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Leave it in his hand. Another one of the verses that comes to mind in the study of Samuel being departed from him was the one out of James 3:16. basically says the hand of a prayer of a righteous man accomplishes a lot. And it's did in other words, but that's exactly what it's trying to say. And that's the kind of person Samuel was. Let's see. David goes ahead and he marries her, actually, and brings her to him. Now, it also says that Saul has given away his other wife, his daughter, to somebody else. Sounds about like Saul. Not going to get quite as far as I would have liked. We will